Lisa.
Malo e lelei, pia malo e whakakoloa o Aotearoa aki e lea whakatonga. Happy Tongan Language Week, Mr. Speaker, and the theme for this year, 2016, is Enriching Aotearoa with the Tongan Spirit. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for this opportunity to give a short call on the Housing Legislation Amendment Bill. It is unfortunate that we're discussing this bill under urgency, Mr. Speaker, because I believe housing is such a crucial issue. It should be going through the actual process, and we should actually take our time and allow the public to have submissions on this bill. It is legislation being proposed that is the latest string in a fiasco proposed as housing policy under this minister. Having a roof or a home, Mr. Speaker, is a basic human right. But unfortunately, it's a basic human right that is not afforded to so many, to thousands of our people, especially our children. We know from Otago University that in census figures 2013, there's at least over 41,000 who are homeless. And we also know from this analysis that 10,000 of these are children under the age of 15. Mr. Speaker, I see too many of these families in my office. They come in the cars that they live in. Some of these mothers, they ring up and they say, I don't have a car, but I'd like a house to live in. Can you please come and help? Many of our staff members, they don't really like to go and do house calls. But when you get a phone call and you're talking to a mother with 5 kids, 7 kids, sometimes 9 kids, and they tell you that they don't have a car, they don't even have the bus fare to get to your office, Mr. Speaker, you get in your car and you go and you help those families out. Just in the weekend, Mr. Speaker, I got a call from one of my teachers in Otara. This is a teacher that had been looking after 5 kids. This teacher no longer taught these 5 kids, but the oldest of these kids was now 16 years old, was attending a school together with her oldest son. This family was homeless. This teacher said that she felt responsible. The son had told her that they'd been homeless for quite a while. This family was a working family, but they were made homeless because the landlord sold the property. I see too many of these families, Mr. Speaker, that have become homeless because the landlords have decided to sell the house. And there are not enough state houses to help these families. But, Mr. Speaker, it is an indictment on our country, Aotearoa, New Zealand, that it takes a family like this to reach out to the Member of Parliament, then for the Member of Parliament to have media involved before a family like this actually gets to access a house. This is a fair country. We used to be so proud, Mr. Speaker, that we're an egalitarian society, well known internationally for being an egalitarian society, for looking after our own, especially our vulnerable families. But we live in a day and age, Mr. Speaker, when this is no longer the case. Just today, we were told that the houses in Auckland, house prices in Auckland, is over $1 million. But we also know that from Otara, the stats last year, 80% of the houses sold in Otara last year, my electorate at Manukau East, were sold to investors. Now, when we know houses are being sold to investors, Otara houses being sold to investors, Mr. Speaker, what that means is investors have to recoup their costs. Who do they recoup these costs from? Our tenants, our most vulnerable families, the families who can least afford to pay these rent. 6 years ago, Mr. Speaker, rent was only about $230 for a 3-bedroom house in Otara. Today, 6 years on, it's doubled. It's doubled. So why is it that we're seeing so many homeless families? Because the rent is out of control. More than 50% of people in Auckland, in general, rent. But when we look at vulnerable families, Mr. Speaker, 82% of Pacific families, they rent, either from private landlords or from the state. And this legislation that we're discussing, an urgency housing legislation amendment bill, is it going to deliver for any of these families? No, I don't think so. Because the affordable houses that Honourable Nick Smith talks about is houses that are 500, 600,000 and above. That is not affordable for many of our vulnerable poor families, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Speaker? No one else seems to be bothered. Mr. Speaker,